Welcome, everyone. This is the Sustainable Design Committee presentation. Kelly Roberts is here to help you understand every aspect of it, and I pass it to her. Kelly, it is all up to you.
Thank you so much, Leo. Yes, as mentioned, this is the Sustainable Design Committee. We are the newest committee for NCSEA. I'm Kelly Roberts. I'm a principal and project manager at Walter P. Moore in Atlanta, Georgia. And I am the chair of this committee. We are relatively new and have only a couple members. So I'm really interested to speak with you all, answer your questions, and give you a little bit more information about what we're trying to do here. Our mission is to promote sustainable design practices within the profession of structural engineering through leadership, advocacy, outreach, and education. So our goal is to advocate for the inclusion of sustainable design within the practice of structural engineering, advocate for the role of the structural engineer in sustainable design, basically making the case that we deserve a seat at the table, that we should be a part of those conversations. Our goal is also to support the formation of sustainable design committees on the local SEA level and regularly correspond with those local SEA committees. So I'll have a diagram later of what this kind of looks like with our committee being the hub of hopefully several member organization committees around the country. And from that, we'll share and disseminate educational material, white papers, presentations that may be created at the local levels, shared up to the national level, and then the same in reverse. Basically be a conduit of information between local sustainable design committees and the National Sustainable Design Committee. And then we'll be partnering with complementary organizations such as the SEI Sustainability Committee. I'm a former member of the SEI Sustainability Committee, and this committee was essentially formed out of the realization and the need that there wasn't that kind of local implementation occurring in SEI that NCSEA could provide. So we would be partnering with them. I'm already doing that. We are already doing that. And we're going to be coordinating activities with them. And then ultimately advocate for the structural engineering community with respect to policy. There's a lot going on right now in the sustainability world. There are low carbon concrete codes and just green codes that are happening all over the place. Lots of discussions at ACI, ASTM, AISC about low carbon, about materials that we all specify every day. And we need to understand what's happening and how it's going to affect our profession in the future. So our goal is to find hopefully one person in every NCSEA member organization. For example, CEOG is the member organization in Georgia where I live, to serve as a liaison between the National Sustainable Design Committee and the local MO, and eventually establish a Sustainable Design Committee within each MO. And then we would obviously share information between the national and the local MOs. So this is kind of how we work. We have the main Sustainable Design Committee and then all of the member organizations. And then we are, of course, liaising with the SEI Sustainability Committee and one of the big organizations that's kind of an offshoot of that, which is SE 2050. And if you're interested in learning more about sustainable design, embodied carbon, and how it's affecting the structural engineering profession, I'll be giving a member webinar along with Megan Stringer from CEOG May 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So please sign up for that. We will also have more information about how to join the committee and some of the initiatives that we'll be working on. And you can basically contact me at any time to join the committee. And we also are on the website, of course, if you are interested in joining that way. That's the main intro to the Sustainable Design Committee and what we're trying to accomplish. And then I'd love to hear from different folks about your questions and just any kind of conversation we could have.
I know Kelly would appreciate if you use the chat if you so chose. You can also turn on your webcam and start the discussion live.
I should also mention that I have been going to different SEAs and speaking with them and giving presentations. So if you're interested in having myself or a member of our committee speak to your local SEA about this specifically at one of your meetings, we can set that up. I have upcoming presentations right now with DVACE and Sione, and I'd be happy to do that with your MO as well. Yeah, so we got a question, how many SEAs that you have confirmed already have a sustainable design committee? And the answer is not many. There are several out in California. Basically, all the different members of SEOC have their own sustainable design committees out in California. And I believe CAW in Washington has a group as well. And then in New York, they have a partnership with ASCE. It's called ASCE Met. And so they've started forming a partnership basically to liaise with that group. And then we're going to be talking with them. So there's not that many. I have a feeling that there may be additional pockets of people having sustainable conversations in their SEAs, and they haven't officially formed a committee or maybe haven't spoken to Nashville about it. And one of my goals is to find out who those people are, what they're talking about, what's important to them, and basically have a conduit for information sharing so that we can find out what all these different groups are doing, because there's a lot of great work I know going on in SEAs that could be shared with the rest of the country.
Hey, Kelly, it's Dave Horace.
Hey, Dave.
We have spoken a couple times about the coordination between organizations, SEI, NCSEA, and we've also talked a little bit about CASE. And I remember you telling me after I told you that CASE didn't seem that they had they felt that they had much of a role to play in this.
Yeah.
And you telling me that you thought that that was probably not correct. So is it part of your idea, and this is moving beyond just getting the message out to practitioners, which is a huge ask in and of itself, but is there also some idea from your end to try to work with, I'm going to say CASE, and you've already mentioned SEI, to try to get them engaged?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there is a role for CASE. They kind of deal with a lot with professional liability and risk. And I actually think there is a good amount of that could be on the table soon. There has been a little bit, we've seen kind of mandatory lead ratings pop up in contracts before. And I think with the advent of especially low carbon codes that are written as code language. So in order to meet code, you need to, basically meet maximum carbon thresholds or procure low carbon materials. I think that there is additional professional liability and risk that structural engineers are going to have to address in a similar way to how architects have been put in this position in the last couple of years. I think we're going to find ourselves there as well. And so I do believe there is a role for CASE at the sustainability table, especially in monitoring different carbon codes that are going on across the country, different legislations, buy clean legislation, that type of stuff that's happening. I think there's a pretty big role for them there. And yes, I don't know that our committee is going to be able to tackle all of that. So I would hope that CASE could tackle some of that, and then we could basically liaise with them. If they don't tackle that, then that's something that we would definitely want to look into.
Thanks. I feel like we need to have some sort of a way to talk to them about some of the issues and see if we can't convince them that this is something that they need to be more involved in so that they are willing to tackle some of that. And that kind of outreach, in addition to practitioners, but outreach to other organizations might be something we can do without trying to do all the work ourselves.
Yeah, agreed. So I guess let me ask some questions of the people that are here. Is this something that's being discussed in your SEAs at a local level? Have you been seeing presentations on sustainable design, on embodied carbon? Is this a topic that you've seen crop up a little bit more, maybe in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. It's absolutely a topic that has gained popularity over the past couple of years for good reason. Trying to combat sort of reducing our carbon footprints. There's a lot of different research that's coming from the steel, concrete. It's all different industries, and we're trying to just get up to speed. But on the flip side, too, jurisdictions are starting to place certain requirements of us as structural engineers to try and meet some of these carbon footprint goals. So here in Massachusetts, we're still trying to tackle that on our side. There is some initial interest to try and set up a sustainability committee, but I think we first have to get educated as to how do we tackle this first, and then we'll proceed to discussing what the next steps are.
Yeah, so I'd be happy at any time to, I know a couple engineers that are involved on the SEI side in their sustainability committee. They're in Massachusetts, that are in Boston. And so I'd be happy to partner with them to speak to you guys anytime about this topic, to see if we can get the ball rolling there with getting some more active people involved. What about in other locations?
I guess I'll speak up. I'm Denise. I'm in Philadelphia with the DVACE organization, which I think you're coming to speak to our group at the end of your dinner. And we don't have an official committee yet. And I think as engineers in our area are at least becoming more aware of it, we're starting to have just individual conversations here and there. So I think there's probably interest in starting some sort of committee in Philly. And I think, I'm personally interested in sort of connecting with people in other parts of the country that are further along in their, sustainability initiatives and then maybe some of the Northeast as some of the legislation goes. So I think this is great. We're trying to set something up on a national level. I mean, one question is, how often does your national committee meet, or what types of things are you trying to do to kind of get this off the ground?
Yeah, so I definitely have a lot more movement this year. We are going to have a member webinar first in May, and I'm kind of using that as kind of in a kind of a stepping off point for our committee. At the moment, we don't have a regular meeting cadence schedule. It's more been on an as needed basis as we kind of figure out exactly what we're doing and exactly how all of our relationships are working. So at the moment, I've been more focused on making connections with different SEAs and trying to get on their calendars to give presentations and just spread the word. I think education and just spreading the word at this point is our kind of our first focus. As you said, you need to learn a little bit more about it, and then can figure out how to implement this locally, how to get involved, and where you fit. One thing that this committee is focused on is more education, outreach, advocacy versus actual writing white papers, doing carbon studies. There's a lot of that kind of already being done at the SEI level, and we don't need to replicate, thermal bridging studies. That's not what we want to do here. What we'd like to do is just basically, gather information and disseminate it and provide just information and outreach to structural engineers so that they can figure out how to implement this in their practice. That's the main goal, is to support practicing structural engineers.
I think as more people are signing up for the SE 2050 challenge, they're going to be looking for resources on how to fulfill the requirements for each year, so that their firm can, stay on with the commitment. And so, like, it's split into four areas, I guess. Advocacy, education, reporting, and something else, but something technical. So what we've done in my office is we just, the four of us signed up, and so we each took a component of it. My component's advocacy, and so, like, I'm trying to figure out for myself how to market this, because one requirement is describe the value of SE 2050 to clients. How can we collaborate to drive adoption? And it's like really hard to figure that out. Like, who are your clients? If you're just a purely structural engineering firm, are your clients your architects? And so, I mean, you could look at it from the standpoint of, okay, I'm trying to appeal to architects who are maybe seeking a COAT Top 10 award for their project, or trying to fulfill just their lead requirements, some materials and resources. And you could say to them, hey, I'm trying to, I'm already gonna be doing part of this to that will probably help fulfill these materials and resources requirements. And so I'm actually helping you do your work. And so I guess that, that's one angle. And then like my firm, we don't really partner up with other architects because we have our own architects. So I guess our clients would be, we work with a lot of universities, and so maybe, just the universities, and how can we appeal to them? And so, it's hard. A lot of times they come to us with RFPs already stating their sustainability requirements. And so what I started thinking was, well, a lot of what they're doing with sustainability is so geared towards energy efficiency. And I just read an article saying, like, getting all these new solar panels and, making your building out of glass may be helping your energy efficiency, but it's like completely losing what you're trying to do if you've got all of this embodied carbon in your components. And so you want to maybe target your client, say it's a university, and say, so you're advertising that you're trying to hit this goal of zero carbon emissions by 2025. Well, you're not, you may fulfill that if you're just looking at energy emissions emitted by your campus, but you're not fulfilling that with embodied carbon. And, we can help with that, because that's a lot of what SE 2050 is about, is the embodied carbon from, harvesting and production, and then all the way to demolition and reuse of the material.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head about why the time is now for this, why this needs to happen right now, because there has been a big focus on energy efficiency, on operational emissions, on operational carbon for a long time. But then people have recently realized we're never going to meet the ultimate goals of sustainability if we don't start focusing on embodied carbon, because embodied carbon is happening now. This is what they refer to as the time value of carbon. And in reality, what's really going to happen in the building industry is that over the next 30 years, between now and 2050, 50% of the emissions are going to be from embodied carbon, not operational, because operational happens over the life of the building. So we're a much bigger piece of the immediate right now pie. And that's why this is an important focus for our profession and our industry right now. And I completely agree with you that practicing engineers are going to be looking for guidance from organizations like NCSEA to help with the goals of SE 2050, to help with the now goals of AIA 2030 and the embodied carbon reporting that's now in DDX. Our clients are going to be asking us for this information and expecting us to be able to deliver. So that's the goal of this committee, is to help practicing engineers to provide education. And, you know, like, for example, a piece of SE 2050 is writing an ECAP, an embodied carbon action plan. And hopefully we can get information out there about what other people are doing, provide information sharing. And that would be ultimately the goal, to provide a forum and a place where people can share what they're doing and then share it back to their local organizations.
Here,
So we're all on the same page.
here in South Carolina, we've got the Wood Utilization Council and all the stuff they're doing up at Clemson University.
Right.
We've got 3 major cement manufacturers in the state. We've got a handful of steel mills scattered across the state, along with a couple of major structural steel fabricators, the guys that fabricate buildings going up in New York and Chicago. Depending on which group is talking, which one claims to be the better,
Right.
as far as the carbon capture and the best way to go.
Right.
So we get mixed messages. We hear more from the wood people pushing cross-laminated timber and mass timber,
Sure.
but each group claims to be the most carbon friendly and the best one.
That is true. There is a lot of lobbying and information sharing in the material industries right now. They know that, they know that this is coming and that they are going to be held to account. So they are all competing against one another. And some are playing nicer than others, I will say. So at actually the summit last year, we had representatives. I actually hosted a forum as one of the sessions, and we had all the representatives from wood, NRMCA, concrete, and steel, AISC. And so we had them each present on what they're doing right now, not which one of them is better, because there's different applications for every material, right? There's always a good time to use wood, a good time to use concrete, a good time to use steel, right? It's difficult to really compare them directly. Of course, we can do that. That's what whole building life cycle assessment is about. We can basically, as engineers, take the data that we've been given, run an analysis, and determine which one is the best based on the information that we have, and then specify that. That's a growing practice within the realm of structural engineering, to do that material accounting and environmental accounting. We're doing that on projects right now. And that's one of the things and the pieces of education I think that needs to get out to structural engineers, is that, yes, I know that you're hearing a lot from the material industry, but you can break it down in the same way that we solve an engineering problem, by simple math, and determine which actually is the best thing. And then you'll know for yourself which one is the best thing for your project, because it's going to vary. It's not as clear cut as everybody would like to make it seem. It's not always one way better. There's a lot of things that you can do within each material to make that material better. And it's really about optimization within materials.
Amen.
Hey, so Kelly, a great conversation, and I don't mean to detract from it at all, but I think you're anticipating my question, because I think I've asked this to you before, that the little bit of competing interests between sustainability and resilience to some degree, at least in California, where we're talking about resilience to earthquakes in particular, and about attempting to limit damage, sometimes by designing the building to be stronger or more stiff, or just doing a performance-based design to make sure we understand what the damage potential will be.
Yeah.
And we're getting clients, or maybe state agencies, that are asking for sustainability and resilience in terms of long-term life of the building and that sort of thing. And we do find a little bit of a challenge talking to them about designing for better performance. And some people equate that to more use of materials. And we haven't been able to capture the long-term effects of that, because we feel like designing for less damage actually is beneficial to the embodied carbon conversation over the entire life of the building when a disaster or natural event happens, right? So has your committee been talking about that? Or maybe I just plant the seed and we can certainly talk about that after the session closes, because I know we're kind of up against the clock too.
So I don't think my committee has been talking about that yet, but it's certainly a topic that's discussed amongst sustainability professionals, instructional engineering, specifically whole building life cycle assessment professionals, because what's the most important consideration is the assessment of service life. So in order to compare apples to apples, you have to consider service life. And certainly the most sustainable building is the one that never gets built, or the one that doesn't have to be rebuilt. That's very critical and important. And so I think resilience is a piece of the sustainability conversation. They are different discussions, they're different things, but at the same time, resilience is integral to sustainability, in that we can't be building 20-year buildings that are super sustainable and have no carbon footprint if they just fall down in an earthquake. That doesn't work, right? So service life is the main key factor in comparing those things. I think, a 50-year service life building is not the same as a 100-year service life building. And so proving that out, and I think taking those analyses to state agencies is probably the way to go there. I've not attempted that in California, but that's.
Yeah, and by no means was I expecting us to solve it today. I
No.
know that I know you and Kevin Moore have been working together, when you can, on collaborating at the NCSCA resilience and sustainable design levels. And I just want to kind of throw it out there to the rest of the group to make sure we have some awareness of, like I said, sometimes competing interests or messaging, or how do we kind of solve that problem all at the same time. So.
Yeah, it's a big discussion in the industry right now. I sit on ACI 318 sub N, which is this new sustainability portion of ACI 318. And this is a big discussion right now on that sub N committee about how to address the nexus of sustainability and resilience.
Yeah. I've also seen some really good presentations about, the greenest building is the one that's not built, and reusing existing buildings and wanting to find, again, in California, wanting to find the right time to capitalize on seismic improvements. At the same time, energy improvements are being done, because again, you're going to invest all this money in some really improved operational efficiency, in terms of MEP or insulation or whatever it may be. But yet the building might be a liability when it comes to the next earthquake. And how do you balance that investment on the energy efficiency, but also the seismic performance side of things too? So yeah. Anyways, I'll stop talking now. I've used my soapbox time.
Well, I would like, this is Jackie, I'm in Virginia, and I work at a relatively small company called Mosley Architects, and we're an AE firm, but we have a dedicated sustainability department that mostly works with implementing LEED and things, but a lady in that department has been talking to me about this very thing that you just brought up, Ryan, about how we talk about resiliency. And we're not in a high seismic zone out here, but it was the talk of the town back in 2011 when we had, I believe, a 5.2 earthquake, and we had quite a bit of damage around here, but it's still, is continuing the conversation 10 years later. And so anyway, just that is a discussion that's happening, and I'm excited to see it here too.
So with that, if this conversation sparked your interest, if you are interested in learning more, as I've mentioned, we are actively looking for lots of members because we're brand new. So trying to fill out our roster. So please email me, please get involved. We'd love to have you. I'd love to start corresponding with you, even if you're not going to be the person that can liaise with our group or join our committee or start your own in your SEA. If you could find that person and start making a connection with me, I would really appreciate it. I think it's just really essential for our profession to start having all of these conversations and have these conversations within NCSEA.
Thanks, Kelly. Really good work and great introduction. And I hope people take you up on the offer to get as much connection as we can throughout the nation here.
All right. Thank you all very much.